do it. The only major announcements, actually, there are a couple of major announcements. I threw a study guide up on Canvas, so that's up there for us to take a look at some point over the weekend. There's a chapter we haven't started covering yet. We'll start that probably today and then going into the couple days of next week. We'll have a review session on Thursday for whatever questions people have about anything on study guide, but I can answer that and start another class as well. And then there is no class on Monday, Martin Luther King Day. Don't show up, you will be lonely. Other questions?
Martin Luther King Day was on a Monday.
It is.
My brother happens to also your birthday. It's nice this year.
So first thing I wanted to do is go over some of the results of our brainstorming ideas. There were lots of good ideas that got posted here, but I kind of wanted to take a critical mind to what we had. So have people had a chance to look at what was popular, what wasn't? If not, take a second and take a look at this. It's kind of as we go over it. So I will read some of these that got quite a few likes, just to get a sense of questions we can be thinking about. Why were the ones that were popular? What was it about those ideas? What's shared in common between the popular ideas, or what's distinct between the popular ideas? What are the differences between them?
Which ones were the most popular?
We're going to go through it. I'm going to read, I guess, whatever got something like 5 or more likes, maybe. That seems to be some, but not a ton of them. So one here, multiplayer aircraft simulator, where each player takes a role on a plane while flying across a post-nuclear apocalypse wasteland. Travel from airport to airport, while fending off air pirates and irradiated birds. You didn't have me until the irradiated birds. Now I'm interested. Do they glow? That's cool. Open world game where you play as a medieval merchant, growing your understanding of currency and trade while the world evolves around you, requiring you to make more strategic decisions to progress up the class system. Interesting. Take part in World War II inside a B-17 bomber as it commences air raids across Europe. You're able to take any role inside the aircraft, such as gunner, pilot, co-pilot, maintenance crew, etc. Maybe you're hired at an outer space explosive barrel relocation company. Your goal is to economically drain the company without getting fired. You're a typical office worker, but your boss is insufferable. In an attempt to get a reason to fire you, he proceeds to provide you with crazier loads of work and asks for even crazier requirements of you, making first contact with aliens as an example. Interesting. Continuing. Adventure game where you've been trapped on an island filled with ferocious animals with a mountain at its center, helicopters waiting at the top to pick you up, and the seas are rapidly rising. Cannot swim, creating a time limit. Failing a battle on one level gets you knocked down a level. FPS where one of the weapons is a robot detector. You can't tell which NPCs are robots, but if you don't detect them, they will attack you. Robots are bad guys, humans are good guys. If you shoot a human, you lose the points. If you kill the humans, you lose. If you don't kill the robots, they will kill you. It's reasonably detailed. Game where you give birth to and raise an explosive barrel on a spaceship. If you fail to care for the barrel, it will explode, sucking everyone into space. You found the ridiculous stuff. I love it. Stealth fish game that involves drowning other fish based on your assignments. Most combat is hand-to-hand, but can interact or pick up temporary weapons. We have a lot of fours. This deep in, I wonder if we read this far with theirs. Get closer to, here's one. Simulator-like game driving through foreign land, and the conflict comes from being unable to read the road signs and being harassed by the law or locals. Cool. So thoughts, what is shared in common between popular ideas? Any thoughts on that?
I'm curious what and zany situations.
interesting situations that aren't necessarily sitting in a classroom, listening to a monotone professor. That doesn't make for a great game.
A lot of freedom of travel, at least in a couple of them. It's like the flying simulator and then this car.
Yeah, so we talked about moving through a space a while ago. So all of these would contain an interesting way of moving through some kind of level or space.
For some of these, I noticed it was taking what would be a mundane situation and then making it strange in some way.
Okay, yeah, taking something that you would at least understand the controls of or the reasoning behind being in that situation and then changing it to be a little bit more ridiculous. Yeah, yeah.
There's always a conflict when you're trying to achieve a goal, but in order to achieve that goal, you have to fight off some sort of conflict.
Yeah, so in the ones that are popular, it's obvious what the objectives are, and it's obvious what is the conflict, what's in the way of your achieving that objective. I think that's a very important part of even a simple game idea, is that you need that structure built into your game's description.
A lot of them were like twists on like popular genres already, where it's like it gets very wacky with like the explosive feral child, but it sounds like it would be like a pet simulator type game.
Yeah.
But you just an absurd pet as the one you're caring for. And then there's like the medieval merchant one where it's like some medieval setting is like a general like theming in games, but usually you're playing as some hero of some form, and it's just like some dude in the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else? Any other ideas from what we saw in common here? One other thing I want to point out is how spread out the distribution is in terms of how many games got likes. Just about everything has at least one. There are some that don't, but it's few and far between. There are at least 2 likes on more than half, significantly more than half of these, which shows just in general how spread out these good ideas are. That you have an idea, it's not going to be universally popular across everybody, but there are a lot of ideas that get traction from a subset of people. Even when you just ask them to pick their top favorite 16% of game ideas, that gets spread very quickly across a large number of ideas. So that's the other point that I wanted to make from this, is that it's not quite binary, good idea, bad idea. There are lots of good ideas worth pursuing that speak to some proportion of the population. Anything else? Dive back in then. Thoughts on this as an activity? Anyone want to debrief or say what you liked or didn't like? Any ways that you would change it? If you suggest, just was it worth the time to do? Was it interesting?
I like the themed association projects, probably a really great way to like come up with ideas in general.
Yeah,
Because it's probably hard just to sit down and be like, okay, now I'm going to have a new idea.
yeah. Sometimes crazy ideas come from just random pairings of words, and that can become the inspiration to go do something unique and different.
Also, too, it is kind of cool with the random number generator because you're forced to throw out ideas that you like. rather
Yeah.
than trying to cram a bunch of things that you like into one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to have that constraint.
Yeah. I find that to be very interesting.
I think iteratively, like taking the top 5 and brainstorming on those top 5s and adding rules,
Mm-hmm.
doing more random numbers, more brainstorming.
Yeah.
on those.
I've thought about that in the past, but what it's done is it's led to way too many posts. So you have to say, rate your favorite 20, rate your favorite 40 if you do too much of that in one setting. But ideally, yes, I would like to repeat this with different pairings from that and see what different ideas you come up with. So that's easily something that you can do on your own as an exercise if you'd like to try to come up with just a bunch of interesting ideas, and maybe you get some good inspiration from that for something to make in part 2 of this class. Any ways to improve some of the ideas? What did you notice either about your own ideas or about other ideas from other people that could have led to improvement or made things more likable?
I noticed for me when I was like thinking of the ideas, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when I started putting it to paper, I was just like, man, I'm describing something that's kind of relatively basic and has been treaded before. And like the posts that like people enjoyed were not the posts that I enjoyed the most either. Like, which was also interesting to me.
Yeah,
On that topic right there, like that not taking a risk, it's like you ask yourself the question, is this a game like a game I know? So you're using what you already know to define a game. So it's like you get stuck.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Agreed.
Trying to make it the closest possible product to something that you're aware of,
Yeah.
not necessarily having a moment of insight or brilliance
Keeps you
or
from a
something
good
that,
idea,
yeah, something that's novel, a new idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a lot of, I saw a lot of ideas that kept saying like with roguelike elements, and I love those types of games, but all of them are different, it's
Mhm.
hard to really define what those elements are, and it's usually the ones that bend those like if you take the average out of those ideas, it's the ones that are furthest from that average that are usually the most popular, the most interesting ones.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of making something that's truly novel.
I think that can be a huge trap as well, because there's this thing in music. I'm a musician and I've gotten very nerdy on the internet about stuff with involving music, but there's this thing that a lot of musicians go through, where if you're creating something, you go for you're there for a minute, you've written some melody, you're like, I swear I've heard this melody before. And it's like this panic-inducing thing, 'cause you're like, man, I wrote this really cool guitar line. I swear it exists already. And the music community at large says just ignore them. It sounds a little bit like similar, that's fine, whatever, just do it. Pour your passion into it. And don't get trapped by this fear of being something else that already exists. If you really feel like you want to do something, you should do it. Obviously, if all of a sudden, if you're shamelessly copying something, it's different, right?
Where is the inspiration coming from? Is it coming from you, or is it coming from copying something that already exists? That seems like it's the middle ground, or what separates a project that's worth pursuing from a project that is not.
But a lot of it can be also like just a feeling, like this feels like something that already exists. Because you like it, it kind of implies that it already exists, maybe in a way, because everything you consume, everything you like is something you consume. So just the common thing that happens in music that might be relatable.
Yeah. One thing to talk about is that changing your mind will happen as you go through a project like this. So let's take a look at a potential methodology. Begin. That is a very small image. That has seemingly gotten worse over time. Begin with an idea, end with a game. Idea, game.
Doesn't work like that.
Good methodology? Yeah. So obviously there needs to be a bit more structure to this, but also a good game design is usually an idea followed by a prototype, followed by another prototype, followed by another prototype, followed by another prototype, and eventually that leads to a game. And it's through that repetition, through making something that is playable, getting feedback on that playable idea, and making changes to that iteratively, that leads to a final product. So it is a very iterative process. And that leads to large-scale changes that happen throughout that development based on the feedback that you are getting. And that may deviate you quite a ways from your initial idea. But an idea is an important starting point. You need to have an idea of what you want to do in order to have a way to reach that first and second prototype. And eventually you do log in over time. So in this class, something like the first week or week and a half, this will be, of course, talking about part 2, first few iterations of that process, you can change anything and everything that you want. There's nothing that is so locked in at that point because you have time to make those changes and to create around them. But as we get closer to that deadline, you need to start committing to things, especially to the very large scale ideas. You don't have to lock in the details until later, but within the first week or week and a half of a 4-week project, you should not be changing the entire scope of your project anymore. You're creating a skeleton. There's not enough time left to create a good skeleton of something else. You need to make the best of what you have. And of course, you don't want to produce vaporware. We're all familiar with vaporware or what it is like to engage with vaporware. Are people familiar with the term? It's something that when you walk into it, it just kind of puffs. It's like vapor. It just dissipates around you. You go to engage with a game, and the depth and complexity of it, it just kind of, there's nothing here.
Very shallow.
It's incredibly shallow. And as soon as you poke at an idea, you realize that that is the depth. What you see is the extent to which it doesn't reveal itself further, not create interesting decisions. It just exists. So, best game, one that's actually finished in the hands of players. Vaporware is also something that can be an idea that never solidifies. Something that is always an idea, you're always chasing your idea, and it never ends up in the hands of players. It never exists in a state where it's a cohesive product. It's just always and forever an idea. In general stages of production, we can talk about pre-production. This is where you are considering ideas, building prototypes. At the end of pre-production, you know exactly what game you want to make. You have some short demonstration showing off everything about your idea. So that is pre-production. Move into production. This is where you finish your design. Everything there gets locked down. You start implementing. A lot of the implementation is going to happen. At the end of production, you have a complete playable game. From the complete playable game, we move into alpha. We have a small scale play testing with a limited audience, usually audience of people that you know, a small set of people who you recruit. And a lot of what you focus on in alpha are tweaking numbers, tweaking balance. You're not changing the scope of the game anymore. That's all been locked in, but you want to make sure that these ideas, I guess the decisions are meaningful. The decisions are interesting. And to do that, there's going to be a lot of balance changes to make sure that your players have reason to engage with everything that you've designed. Move from alpha to beta. Now systems don't change at all. You've locked in all of the mechanics, everything for the game, and now you are doing nothing but fixing bugs. When a game goes gold, you release it to the public, and you're ready for the 1.0's release, where you, the developer, move into post-release, where you're either adding to the game, fixing bugs, making balance changes, and iterating release to post-release to release to post-release for the life cycle of the game, at least from the developer's perspective. People can be playing the game well past the development of the game.
And I assume like post-launch content updates it's just the same kind of cycle, but you start with like the game as your engine, basically.
Yeah, you can go back to alpha beta as needed. If you're making large scale changes to your game, you're going to want to make sure that you're testing those and making sure that everything you're creating is interesting and relevant and useful. So where you go back to in a cycle can change. Any questions?
With DLC out as like post-release or gold?
It would be within the post-release, but you'd probably be testing some of that DLC material. So you may go back to, you're going to be in you're going to go all the way back to kind of pre-production of how is this slotting into the existing system, the design decisions for it back in production of the DLC, then testing the changes, going back into making sure that it's balanced, bug-free, then you release it. Depends on the scale of the DLC. If it's just a piece of horse armor from Oblivion, then you don't need very much. That was the fork. That was where gaming was ruined. That darn horse armor. The first cosmetic DLC.
I assume if you had a time machine, that would be the one thing you would stop.
If I stopped that, League of Legends wouldn't have been created.
Go back in time and cancel loot boxes.
That stemmed from cosmetics. That stemmed from that whole idea.
I think Dota was already around when we started to
Be real, you're going back and inventing the boxes, let's be honest.
Too bad.
Thing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. This is going to be a unit on why we make games. Why are designers? What are the reasons why you might choose to design something? First and foremost, you might want to make some money. So, beginning, why would we make games? One possible reason, you can make literally hundreds of dollars in the game industry. Do note that there are many easier ways to make money in computer science. You should not go into game design hoping that it is the be-all and end-all for a career. If that is your hope, you better be very good at it and either be hoping to start your own company with regards to making something or interfacing with a company that is going to treat you like garbage. Whenever you're creating entertainment, sometimes that pays less for the same work, unless, of course, for some reason it's sports. But there are a lot of wannabe developers out there, and you just look at the stats. If you're curious, go research the stats on things like mobile game submissions and the average number of downloads that submitted games get, and it's surprisingly small. The games that you are aware of, you're aware of because they already hit big. It's difficult to see the size and scope of the number of games that are out there. You can also look at how many new games are on Steam every year, and that is just getting larger and larger and larger. It's harder to make a name for yourself with something. Yeah.
It's like survivor's bias, where your sample size just becomes the ones that make it, and so
Right.
skews your perspective of the whole situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been extremely lucky to avoid death to this point in my life, but I wouldn't be able to talk about that if I had died already. I wouldn't have the conscious ability to think, wow, I've skirted death, because I hadn't. Same idea.
When you look at like if you were trying to run a freaking ad before, you would all of a sudden realize the astronomical amount of money these companies are paying on their ad campaigns.
Yes.
You just you need to have
capital in order to make it work. So if you don't have the capital to get your game out there and advertise it, there are lots of good ideas, lots of great games that are out there that the developers just don't have the money or the means to get it traction. So for every Minecraft, or going back to the craze of Flappy Bird, which I use as something that would be incredibly simple to develop because it was not a complicated programmatic game. There are tens of thousands of failed projects. But you can make a decent living if you hate yourself. This is a couple years old now, so this is kind of the career source from PayScale. First year average game designer makes about 50K. That's a couple years ago. Early career, 1 to 4 years, about 59. Mid career, 5 to 9 years, 71K. And that just comes from, if you want to see updated versions of this, I probably should have pulled them. Computerscience.org/careers is a good place to look at the data of how much that's being paid. That said, the average job, entry-level job, is about 75 to 80K now. So you're taking about a 2/3 pay cut, or a 1/3 to the point of 2/3 to just be in game dev, on average. That's not to say that you aren't separate from that or could do better than that. It's just that is the industry as a whole. is not the most lucrative industry to be in, given the skills that you have. That is my best pitch as to why you should go do something else. If you are passionate about it, there's a career there for you. If you're trying to make money or just want to do something that's fun, there are many other places for you to be that you will do better. You could make games because you want to be famous. How many names do you know of game designers?
Toby Fox.
The day of Kojima.
Masahiro Sakurai.
Sid Meier. Is Sid Meier's?
Mm-hmm.
Top ever.
David Belinsky.
Shit.
No, I don't know anyone by that name.
John.
That would be a good name to go by, though.
What, Ben?
No, shit.
Hakita, the guy that made Ultra Kill.
So we know some, but it's coming from the same few people who are very interested in the designers of games. How many games have we played? If I just asked us to list off games that we played, we would have tens or hundreds of games. We know the games. We don't really know the people behind the games quite as well, unless we really care to go behind the scenes of a particular game and figure out how did this come to be. But it's not necessary to enjoy the game. Yeah.
And even that being said, like we're all like listing up big names, but that's one person who is heading an entire development team
Right.
for multiple games or even multiple game studios at one point in
Mhm.
time. So this person is a face,
Yeah.
which is not common.
And also how old are all these people? They're
They're
50.
yeah. If we asked for something like anyone behind movies, we would get more of that because for some reason we have awards for this and we watch these awards shows and we get to know the people behind the movies, but we don't really have something as popular as that for games.
Like, I imagine there's like specialized career paths for like designing particular parts. Like
Yes.
certain types, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Games, you don't just go into games, you go into a small subset of that and have.
Yeah. And I imagine like, I don't know how much the industry outsources different aspects of games to either offshore companies or other
Yeah.
companies.
And like assets are almost always like,
Right.
Yeah, soon to be completely AI generated. For everything.
God, no.
Nasty.
You might go into it to the community because there are lots of communities in game development, and this is one of the better reasons to go into it. The industry is small, and you can meet and get to know some pretty important people in the industry relatively easily, because who doesn't like talking about games if you make games for a living? These people are usually very social and very welcoming and want to be seen and talked to. It's more welcoming and diverse than you might think. And also within the indie game scene, once you break into the indie game scene, you are known. It's pretty easy to be respected as a developer once your game gains some traction. Just the fact that your game was successful means that there is some level of respect within the community for what you created, even if no one knows your name.
And the scene's also really strong in Seattle, the indie games.
Yeah, the indie game scene is really strong in Seattle.
You know, the Untitled Goose Game, the guy who made that game was just dicking around.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a AAA game on Switch.
The studio made a game that I bought because it was because of that game that they had made. Yeah. The Playdate console.
Oh, they made that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might I want to make games for personal expression. That's another main reason to make a game. So make some kind of statement. Self-expression. You can make statements through any medium, but games are an excellent source of allowing for people to take on the role that they need to be for that statement. Be able to completely customize the experience and make the player feel responsible for what is happening in the game world. So What form of media could express the concept? If you have a good concept that you want to express, think about different forms of media. What forms of media are you adept at using? You can design for the greater good. You can design games because you want to make the world a better place. So serious games, a lot of my research is in gamification. So the ability to use games for something other than fun. You can have games for learning, games for motivation, games for self-improvement. So the game should still be fun, but it has an alternative reason for you to engage with it. That is the real benefit of the game itself.
So kind of like Noun Town.
It's not what I'm familiar with.
Basically, it's like a language learning game where
Okay.
you're basically tossed into this world to learn the target language. No one speaks
Yeah,
your language, just the target language.
yeah. I've had tons of ideas about how to do things. Like, for instance, what's a menial task in your life that you get no enjoyment out of?
Laundry.
Laundry. Imagine now designing a game surrounding laundry. It doesn't have to engage with laundry in some capacity, but now you have a score associated with the quality and speed at which you engage with it. You turn the game objects into the laundry itself if you wanted to. You could have a game you play on your phone where you're navigating something, and every time you deliver something to a drawer, something happens. There now becomes an augmented reality type of game where you engage actions to consequences, real world actions to consequences in the game. Your hand was up for 1 and 2.
There's also a real group of people that are trying to advocate for Dungeons and Dragons as a form of exposure therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, with the gamification of like laundry, you can always just add like a laundry list of achievements as well. So that way you have platinum.
Yeah, the leaderboard in the laundry game is a laundry list. I like it.
I mean, hey, every few months or so, you can get a whole new leaderboard, so you have a clean slate.
Yeah. Put the leaderboard in the wash.
Have a co-op lobby where you're all at a laundromat.
And the door on the way in is the laundrette mat. It just gets worse. So educational games as well. It's not the most engaging thing in the world to sit in a classroom and be lectured at by someone. So you can turn that into a game. And that doesn't necessarily have to have the same learning outcomes. Like the more you learn, the better. I like tying this to effort, something that we can all apply 100% of. We can all do the best that we can do right now. And that leads to additional motivation to engage with something that we wouldn't otherwise, because if the measurement is the effort that we put in, that leads to a different measure of success than the way society typically measures success, which is some quantitative measurement of performance. So instead of the person who gets the highest grade doing the best in the class, you could say, who is putting the most effort into the class? Each student has a very different current ability level and background leading to the ability to perform at the level that you are right now. And some people just won't be able to keep up with someone who has been immensely privileged from the very beginning of life. Why should we be comparing these people like someone with a less privileged background is more capable or can be as capable as someone who's been very privileged from the beginning? So instead, my idea has been to look at effort, find ways to measure effort, and then your ability to perform in the game is based on that level of effort. The person at the top of a leaderboard, if a leaderboard did exist, could be a student who has a C in the class or a D in the class, but without the motivation to put 100% effort, maybe that's an F level student. But the fact that they can make that change and that difference, they're rewarded in the fact that they can utterly destroy the A student who's coasting by because they don't have to put in as much effort, which might provide additional competitive reasoning for the A student to put everything into it so that they go from a low A to a high A, even though there is a grade-based reason for that to take place. So games can completely restructure other environments with other measures of success. And I think there's a lot of power in designing games for that kind of outcome. Games for social change. Games can inform or influence based on some topic, some current event, some experience. Could be a political topic, could be a social topic. Games for behavioral change. So a game that tries to change up or provide a benefit when you make a healthy decision for yourself. I've thought about rewarding something like avoiding procrastination. The earlier you submit an assignment and the better you do on that assignment, the more credit that you would get in something, a game played outside of the class. And that way there's a reason to not just submit right before the deadline and put off the work as much as possible. So seek to use a game to help people learn to not procrastinate. Exercise app, people familiar with something like Zombies Run as a reason to engage in a game in order to go out and get exercise. Nutrition apps, something that actually you count calories, make sure that you're at a relative calorie balance. General gamification works for this as well. You might design games because you want to become a better designer. So, way to be better at anything, do it. Practice makes better. I talk all the time about how the phrase practice makes perfect is ridiculous. Unrealistic expectation. Practice makes better. Every game you make, even one that you're not proud of at the end, trains your skills. Yeah.
Related to that, when I was at fencing, the guy who was teaching me taught me another phrase related to that. That was practice makes permanent. That I think would be more accurate. Yeah,
I like that too. It helps to reinforce ideas that you can then repeat yourself.
Which, if you're not reinforcing it correctly, you're reinforcing that.
Yeah, that's true. And it has that second dimension to it as well. Yeah, you don't even know if your concepts are good or bad until you implement it. I'd be curious to see if everyone who talked about what you did yesterday, all of these game ideas, if you actually went and made them and then you liked them based on the quality of the game that was made, what would the correlation be between the ideas that we liked and the games that we liked? Which were the actually good ideas and which just sounded like good ideas when you actually have to sit down and play that game doesn't necessarily work as well as you thought it would from the idea or the concept. So these are why designers could want to make games. Let's talk about why players play games. You can design for subsets of player-based goals as well. So, yeah.
If you want to make a game to play, like all
You know, make what you want to play.
Like yeah, all the ideas I've had for games always been like, I would love to play this. I want to make
The fact that you designed it is going to ruin it for you.
Yeah.
A lot of the fun in games comes from the unknown. And if you designed the entire balance of that, engaging with that is going to be a less than stellar experience, I have found. The value you get out of playing your own game is seeing what you accomplished, not necessarily playing it like you've never seen it before. You can't wipe your memory clean. It's like why going back and playing your favorite game, you wish that you could go back and experience it for the first time. But it's even worse when you've designed it yourself.
It does depend on the genre, because some genres lend themselves towards replayability better. So a game like Binding of Isaac, even I can imagine the developers of that are likely to play it since it's not the type of game where knowing how to get through it ruins it. It just, you know
the algorithm, you know the entire room generation system, you know all of the details behind. Is it as interesting when you have the entire mathematical spreadsheet in front of you of here's what could happen?
That's a game where the hardcore players install mods where they have that information themselves. So I would say, yeah.
It is possible. Yeah.
I do feel like if you designed your own game and you had that in-depth of a knowledge about all of the mechanics, you would be able to see those emergent systems that wouldn't be visible to other people though.
Right.
So you could get a deeper insight into something,
Yeah.
That could be exciting in some way.
Yeah. It depends on what you want to get out of it, but I could see that as well. Yeah.
I think going off what you said too was, even if the game isn't like directly for you, if you can figure out exactly what you like, kind of extract that, there's probably some other people who fit in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you're designing it for them. You're not necessarily designing it, you're designing it for you because you want to have played it. But I think the other players are gonna get more out of it than you would playing your own game because they get that experience of playing it from scratch without the knowledge of those systems. They get a slightly better experience just from that, having to discover things on their own. Anything else? Fun's a primary motivator for players. Not necessarily the only reason or the only goal that players have while they're playing it, but players will play something that's not fun as long as it holds their attention. Any examples of that within games that you've played to overcome something that was not fun with the anticipation of this will eventually be fun, or it's at least interesting enough to get me past this roadblock that's not fun?
It's a story of darks.
Yeah. The entire genre of a Souls-like came out of this idea.
I spent way too long in 2020 farming pumpkins in Minecraft Hypixel Skyblock.
Yeah.
CSGO competitive for me.
But also like illegal, right? It's not fun, but you just do it.
League of Legends.
Yeah, I was gonna get there if no one else did. Everyone who plays League of Legends.
Why you gotta get credit if I make a game about why leagues suck?
Any pandering to me has nothing to do with your own personal development, Sunda.
And this isn't towards League of Legends or anything, but I can say for myself that like I play a lot of TF2, and I kid you not, for the entirety of last year, I spent most of my time playing that game, and it's mostly been on idle servers. Like I kid you not, like Steam report says I've been playing that game 70% of the entire year last year, and most of it I think was on idle servers where you don't accomplish a goal or anything. You just sort of do random stuff, and I guess people talk.
There's League as a chat room?
Just play VR chat at that point.
I think I'm gonna talk to a League player.
Yeah,
So-
I got a VR headset. I want to see where that goes.
3 aspects that can make a game fun. It has to be enjoyable, it has to be engaging, and it has to be fulfilling. We're gonna differentiate between those 3 concepts. Any thoughts on differences between those, and how could you design to target enjoyment, to target engagement, and to target fulfillment? Yeah.
To start off with, I think to target fulfillment, to introduce goals into the game that a player can be proud of accomplishing, like something like a difficult challenge that takes a lot of time to get towards, or something even like Minecraft where it's like a creative expression medium almost, where someone can be fulfilled by being proud of a build they made.
Yeah. So when I look at fulfilling, I think something you remember. It has a memory aspect to it. Something you look back on and remember. Do you remember every single gaming session you've had in the last 10 years? Absolutely not. But whatever was fulfilling is something that you still remember. Either you generated a story emerged from that you still remember, an achievement, something that when you platinumed that game and it took you a ton of time to get, the feeling that you had when you got to that point and you achieved that is something that you remember, or something that you want to show off to other people and say, look what I accomplished. All of that leads to fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of friends that are achievement hunters and scrolling through their Steam profiles.
Yeah.
You finished 90% of your games.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little scary.
Well, I think for enjoyability, this might just be kind of me, but definitely like side fluff and Easter eggs along the way. So you have this main arcs that let's say like an RPG or story game, you're going on these big heavy missions, then you're walking down the street and just like somebody like falls off a building or something, like something super random is happening, like little tiny things like that.
Yeah.
Definitely add a lot.
Yeah. Enjoyment, dopamine, engagement, attention, fulfillment, memory are kind of the three ways that I tie these three words together. So when you're making a game, what subset of those are you targeting? And how are you targeting those ideas? So to be enjoyable, what most players seek in a game, we can enjoy competitive play, chance-based play, play that produces vertigo, vertiginous play.
That's sarcastic.
that's it's reasons that people play games, is to experience the thrill that if you experience it in real life may lead to your death.
Okay.
And mimicry. So something that is make-believe, something that is simulated. There's an entire subset of players who play in order to feel thrill.
That's why
I'm not much of a thrill seeker.
That's why I play a set of Corsa, so I can zoom around at 200 miles an hour
Yeah.
without risking my car
Yeah, or your life.
or my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Just some pixels. Anything missing from the definition of enjoyable here? Any thoughts on that?
Escapism.
Yeah. Is that, do you enjoy escaping from reality? Is that, it's more of a coping mechanism. Yeah. Yeah. It's a way of handling, of trading off short-term harm for long-term harm.
Well, in a sense, could that be seen as a form of mimicry?
Yeah.
Would you put, I mean, like, if you're going with that idea of like dopamine and stuff like that, like collecting, I guess? No? Is that?
Depends on the player. I think what players enjoy depends a lot on what creates those dopamine connections in your individual brain.
Yeah.
People play games for lots of different reasons, so what's going to give them enjoyment is going to differ across different people and experiences.
I noticed there's not really a good category for like puzzle solving or any of that kind of like satisfaction of like exploration. Like, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
you could say like the third one is the closest thing you have to like that sense of exploration, but it doesn't fit for me like fully.
Yeah. We'll actually talk about player typology in more detail in a later section where we talk about what is the state of the art with regards to that.
Is there any data on like what games are most popular right now? Like, is there a genre that sort of dominates the market?
That is a really good question. I haven't looked into something like that most recently, but the roguelite exploded about 5 years ago.
Right.
And everyone wanted to make a roguelite of some kind.
Mhm.
And open world was 10-ish years ago, 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
Everyone wanted to make something open world.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Battle Royale became super popular.
Gonna-
Before that, there was the competitive FPS, the original Call of Duty and CS:GO, and
Boiled down a lot of those games, the main mechanic is competitive.
yeah, competition is very, very popular, which is hard for me to say because that is as far removed from why I play games as possible. But just seeing how popular it is.
Oh, no wonder why it would.
Something interesting, I think, to know with game sales right now as well is it's probably more varied than it used to be because people aren't getting their games from a physical store, so it's not, they're not just picking up what's stocking the shelves.
Mhm.
They can find anything online, and so it's gonna, logically a lot more variance in what people are actually enjoying. So it's not as likely that there actually is something dominating the
Game
market
dev
right
is
now.
it's more accessible than it's ever been. It's a lot less work to be able to make a game that other people can play. One than two.
I'd also say for a reason why like competitive games or a lot of like popular genres seem to involve like competitive aspect is that it's the easiest or probably most difficult to make content the value media for it, especially like in repetitive media. Because like if you watch like a story-based game, if you watch like one person play, you can't watch it, like they can't repeat it. A person makes a video on YouTube or something media, you can't really repeat it as many times.
Yeah.
Versus a competitive game, kind of you can constantly make more like draw players in.
And we'll talk about this later. It's actually a completely different method of balancing. You give two people the same thing, it's already balanced.
I was gonna mention, like, being able to stream games as well, or being able to play the game out there to see someone else play the game, to see what you was like.
Yeah.
You know beforehand, like, I would like this type of game. Maybe over time.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something similar to it. I feel like a lot of games are almost developed where the demographic is the streamer. So some games aren't necessarily developed for the population.
Yeah.
And it's developed for somebody to play them.
Play it to generate more revenue by people watching other people playing.
Which is a relatively kind of new concept in the last.
It turns games into sports. We watch people play games that are physical games all the time.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah. I guess we probably need to pack up I forget if Friday, if there's I don't think there's anyone waiting to come in, but if anyone wants to say anything while people are packing up, we can, yeah.
I think that one didn't take into account the fact that those things kind of combine. E&D is chance and competitive. At the same time.
Yeah, combination.
But also can be it's
Yeah.
playing for a whole
And I think that also speaks to how we're open that is, but that's so fun. Players want to do, because
Yeah.
as much as it's like its own games, it's what you can modify it.
Chapters are due Sunday.
Very much a create ice skate, you can build it.